For those of you who don't know, Laura was one of the great distance runners of her generation. She is an entrepreneur, and now she's a writer. Now she's written this wonderful book. Linda, also accomplished runner, has done a number of things, interesting things over the course of your career. But of relevance to this evening, you coached for many years at the high school level. And it's really out of those experiences that you came to write your book, Take Back the Game. And I am interested in the two of you for a number of reasons, but I'm also a runner, not nearly as accomplished as either of you. In fact, I thought that we could all go for a run this afternoon, and I asked, so I said, let's go for a run this afternoon. And so Linda says, well, I'm not running with Lauren, she's world class. So you flaked, and then I said, all right, I'll go running with Lauren. And then Lauren says, no, I'm not going to run. I'm going to go for a run earlier in the day. And I think what happened, correct me if I'm wrong, Lauren, you looked at my Strava, you said, he's so slow, why would I waste a good running day? So I ran alone, it's very sad.
You should have gone in the morning with me.
Yeah. I'll get over that though. So both of you have written books about the crisis in youth sports. We said girls sports, and I think probably we're going to talk probably more about girls than boys in this, because I think both of you would agree the problems are more acute with girls. And just to set things up, I'm going to just describe the manner in which this conversation is going to take place, because we're going to play a little game, the Martian game, which I'll explain in a second. But before we do that, I want to read one paragraph from your book, Lauren, which explains to anyone who is at all curious about what we mean by the crisis in girls' sports, what we're talking about. So you're talking about, you're at Stanford and you're running in the NCAA cross-country championships. And I have to say, at this point in your book, when I read this paragraph that I'm about to read to all of you, I stopped and I was like, oh my God. It was that kind of, anyway. So here, let me just read this. I'm going to read, Lauren is describing her team that is competing in the NCAA championships. Julia was off the grid managing another injury, determined to maintain her fitness by using the Stairmaster in her living room. Caitlin was missing, and the coaches were cagey about why. Jean had battled bulimia in secret and suffered related injuries from malnutrition, but seemed to be healthy and engaged now. Melindy, a former high school star out of Canada, was returning from her third or fourth unexplainable stress fracture with real momentum. Beyond them, Aaron and a group of upperclassmen were more adjusted to their women's bodies now. Then we, a couple paragraphs later. We won the conference championship and regionals as a team, but lost the individual titles to a woman from a rival school who had lost so much weight from the year before that you couldn't help but stare at her exposed hip bones in horror. I watched her isolate herself from her teammates at the event and felt lucky we didn't have that bad of a problem. So reading that took me aback. And that frames the problem for us, I think, very nicely. And so what I wanted to do tonight was to play what I call the Martian game. And the Martian game is that imagine there's a Martian who doesn't know anything about America, American culture, sports in America, nothing. Just a Martian in one of those balloons floating. And all he's been given is your two books. So he reads your two books, and he reaches a series of, he has no context, he has no inhibitions, he's not worried about asking. So I am the Martian, and I'm going to ask a series of questions unconstrained by any kind of, other ideological positions of mine, previous experiences. I'm just drawing what might seem like extreme conclusions from both of your books, and I want you to respond to these conclusions. Okay?
Okay.
All right. The Martian's first statement is, the Martian says, should we ban men from ever coaching women again?
It might not be a bad idea.
Tell me why.
Well, there are too many men coaching women, for one thing. Women and girls need female role models in leadership positions. Everyone thinks of sports as that's where you learn how to be a leader. And yet, very few girls are actually coached by women. And even at the collegiate level, it's about 42%. High school level, it's in the 20s. And in youth sports, it's 25%. So let's get more women in there so that young girls and teenagers can see that women can be leaders too.
Lauren, do you have thoughts on the Martian's ban?
Well, I like these points. I agree. And running, only 17% of the coaches in running are women, which I was really surprised, even lower than the average. I would say let's not ban them until we've given them a chance to fill the giant gap of knowledge that we all are living with when it comes to female bodies and how they develop and how they operate. Let's give them a chance to learn. Let's see how many of them want to, and the ones that want to and are willing to and will do the work, let's let them stay. And then let's do all the stuff that Linda's talking about.
That's very enlightened.
Yeah.
I was struck in reading your book, Lauren, by a big chunk of your book is a very powerful and insightful explanation of the difference in the physiological trajectories of young women and young men. Mm-hmm. And you make this, you were talking about your time at Stanford, the young men are, a man or a boy, whatever they are, of college age is at their physical peak. They get better almost automatically every year. They're full of every positive hormone known to man. And whereas the women are going through a much more complicated process.
Yeah.
And the reason the Martian asks that question is the Martian says, how can a man ever fully understand what a young woman is going through if he's never gone through it himself?
Well, I would say to the Martian, we can't apply that logic to the problems of the world, or else the problems would only be able to be solved by people who've had an identical experience. And the problems are big enough that we need everyone involved. And I don't think there's anything that mysterious about the female body that anybody couldn't learn if they wanted to. It's just what
But we've been at it for years and years and years now. And, just reading your book and that little section, it's not, we have a largely male group of coaches, and yet we have a persistence of these kinds of problems. And I'm wondering whether, as the first step in solving the problem, is to replace them with people who maybe have a better chance of understanding.
Yeah. Well, with women coaches, you have a higher likelihood that they've gone through something similar, but you also have plenty of female coaches perpetuating the same harm that their male coaches, pass down to them and repeat the culture. And so there's the knowledge is needed by female coaches too. I get a lot of messages of people who've read the book, women and men, who are like, wow, I didn't know any of this stuff. I feel really bad now. I've been coaching for 10 years, 15 years. I wish I could go back and have some different conversations with my athletes than I had. And the passage you read in the book, what that really highlights to me hearing you read it again is all of those women were the ones blamed for the problems they were going through. It was like, oh, you trained too hard, or you didn't eat right, or whatever. Like, there was no understanding of why the women were making the decisions they were making, why their bodies were breaking down at higher rates than our male peers. And I mean, we don't study female bodies enough. We don't have enough research on female bodies. So I can't really blame coaches for not knowing these things. Plus, we sexualize most of the things that are specifically female, or we make them dirty. Like the menstrual cycle has this reputation for being something you can't talk about without using euphemisms. Breasts are sexualized as soon as you're 12 and a half and get them. So it makes it hard to talk about our bodies, and hard to talk about our bodies with grown-ups, especially.
Linda, what did your athlete, you coached for many, many years, What did your athletes get from you as a woman that they couldn't have gotten from a man, or do you think that there was no?
I don't think that they got something from me that they couldn't get from a man. In fact, there's a man out here in the audience who I coached with, who is a fabulous coach and role model for me, who was very sensitive to the girls', feelings and wishes and dreams. So I don't. The more I think about it, I have to go back and tell the Martian that we don't need to ban male coaches, but we should be educating them along with women coaches who, as Lauren points out, are also guilty of a lot of the nonsense that we're reading about. I mean, you look at the Harvard ice hockey coach. I mean, every week there's another story about some egregious behavior on the part of a professional coach, and they're oftentimes women too.
Yeah. What about this though? The second thing that I took from reading both of your books was, particularly from Lauren's, was this notion, this idea that I talked about very briefly before, about that you spent a lot of time on the book, that the trajectory of young men and women is different, and that many women have this kind of, in their late teens, early 20s, have a kind of performance plateau.
Yeah.
And so they observe the men getting better and better every year, and many of them hit a period of a couple of years where their times are not getting better. In some cases, they're going backwards, and that triggers all kinds of. How do you deal with that issue? I mean, is there a case to be made for somehow separating out the cultures of male and female running it out at that age, so that there isn't this kind of the women looking at the men and thinking they should be doing the same?
I think that it's fine to have different experiences. You just need the different experiences normalized from day one. Like when the coaches are having their conversations with parents and students, that's the time to lay out, hey, we have a cross-country team or track team or basketball team, and we are working with 13 to 18-year-olds, for example. And female bodies are going to be going through something that looks more like this, which is like, if you just look at all the data on performance, it really doesn't matter what the sport is. By age 16, 17, female gains, performance gains on average are like 1 to 1.5%. Whereas their male counterparts they go like this, do, 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 and the female athletes go like this. But we haven't been telling them during that stage of life that, hey, this is temporary. This is like a blip in your long-term progression, and your prime is in your mid to late 20s and beyond. So really, we just need to, every coach of an adolescent female person should be telling them, hey, this is going to be part of your normal progression. More than likely, you're going to have a plateau or even a short-term dip. I will be coaching you through that experience. As teammates, you're going to be navigating this with your teammates. Some of you will be on this part of the curve, some of you will be on this, some of you will be on this. So part of team culture needs to be supporting each other through that rocky road from day one. And not looking at it as a bad thing. It's just a different path. Like, is there going to be feelings of disappointment? Sure, and we can make space for that without pathologizing it. And that's what we've been doing, is because we don't recognize that females have this performance wave instead of this performance line. When they hit the plateau, I mean, there's parents who have been like, I sent my kid to a sports psychologist because I thought they just didn't care enough anymore. Or I sent them to a dietitian because I thought that their nutrition was sloppy. I'm like, that's just puberty. You just pathologized puberty.
Yeah.
But see, the trouble, I totally agree with you, and yet I think that implies that you coaches have room to have the time, and that athletes are patient, and that their parents are patient. And at least in my experience with high school parents, of course, many were wonderful. I loved them. Always have to say that.
You said it. Good job.
Yeah. But there's this drive to achieve and to get results right away. There's not, and if they're plateauing or getting worse, then again, like, what's the problem here? And so it is about coaching education.
It is, and it's also, there's some things we can't change. I mean, sport, as we know it, was built around the male body. So high school sports, we invest a ton of money in high school sports and college sports, and that's ages 13 to 22. That's a great time to be a male in sport, right? And that's why they're, I'm guessing, so integrated into our education systems. It's like and why scholarships are given out based on who's the best 17 or 18-year-old. That's a better predictor for a male-bodied person than a female-bodied person of what your future potential is. But the scholarships and that whole system was created long before female athletes were like up in there asking for their share of the scholarship pie. But now there's no getting around the fact that 17 and 18-year-olds are the ones getting offered the scholarships or not. And so that adds this enormous pressure right during development, right during your puberty experiences of change, where you're like, okay, you're telling me to accept this temporary state of plateau, but there's a lot on the line, hundreds of thousands of dollars of scholarship and opportunity. And if I just restrict my diet, if I fight puberty, if I, try to aim for this body that I've been told is the ideal performance body now, then I can give myself a chance to have those opportunities, but then you pay the price later.
Well, this brings us to the Martian's second point, which is one that Linda raises explicitly in her book, which when I came to that part of your book, I was like, amen, I'm with you on this. Both as Malcolm and as the Martian. That is it time to pull the plug on athletic scholarships and preferences? If you're, Lauren, you're describing this kind of the level of pressure that is brought to bear on the 17-year-old girl at a time in her development when you can't make, a kind of reasonable prediction about.
No.
We have this whole system in place that's being driven by the enormous cost of college education, by the expectations that come with scholarships. What if we just ended them?
I'm all for it. And of course, many of the kids going through it now would be like, but wait, that's not fair. That's just what we've been counting on. But, it would just, if there were no admissions advantage and no athletic scholarship of any kind available to college kids, then it would completely change the way we provide sports to kids now, because there wouldn't be this race, pardon the pun, to to achieve by 13, because you might all disappear, and also I love sports and I'm a runner and I think they're wonderful, but it's not clear to me why a high school athlete should get an advantage over someone who plays the oboe or who's in a choir. Like, why aren't there special dispensations for them? They aren't entitled to special scholarships or admissions advantages or a streamlined admissions process. So I think it would be more fair. I think it would also be impossible to claw it back, or at least very difficult.
I really loved that part of your book, though, because I've often thought, man, if we could just get rid of the scholarships, it would release so much pressure on athletes, especially girls. I think that the pressures would just go way down. We'd be way more likely to allow development and change to happen on its timeline. But reading your book, I was like, oh my gosh, there's this whole other side of it, the whole big business of youth sports that's also driven entirely towards that same aim. And as someone who has a 9-year-old and a 5-year-old, and I'd like them to participate in sports, I don't want to be a part of that mania. I don't want to be having to travel for hours every weekend to give my kid the top performance opportunity. I want the kind of sports that you describe in your book as an ideal. And so I am for getting rid of athletic scholarships. But what had prevented me in the past was, what would we replace it with? And in your book, you also provide some really great ideas of that there are other models. And I think sometimes we lack imagination. It's really helpful to see other ways people are doing it. And I can't remember the one that you described. Maybe you could talk about it.
Remind me what that would be. No, I think, certainly in Europe, they don't do youth sports like we do it at all. So, there's no school-based sports. It's the after school, it's community-based sports. So that also sets up the whole, the college level. And when I was running in England, there were no teams. There were teams, but it was completely alien to the way we do it here. And there was no coach.
It was like student-led, right?
Totally student-led. It was probably comparable to intramurals here. And it was very serious and organic. And I don't see why that's not, replicable here. And I think at the college level, another possible suggestion I had, which will never happen, is, well, how about if we just abolished college sports? As if, you know? But I say that, but why not club and intramural? I mean, it's not saying kids can't
Well, you
play
mean
sports.
why not abolish? You're talking about intercollegiate sports.
Like the
Varsity
NCAA.
sports, yeah.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
what's ironic about this is in research for my book, what women had in sports was club and intramural
Yeah.
before Title IX. But there was a huge discrepancy. Obviously, there was no scholarships for us, but there were for men in the NCAA. There was more media, all these things that come with that infrastructure for men's sports. We wanted it too.
Right.
When maybe all along we wanted equality, but maybe they should have followed our lead. Maybe we were onto something. Well, when Title IX happened, there was a discussion for the first couple of years about, will we fold into the existing men's programs or will we run our own show here? Like we've guaranteed we have, that the schools need to provide the opportunities, but we don't necessarily have to run it exactly like the NCAA. And it took a little bit before the decision was made to join the NCAA. And like essentially one of the arguments in my book is that we should be recreating sports with female bodies at the center so that they can have an equal chance to thrive in the sports system, and that we kind of need to take it back and be able to do that, because giving people the same thing the exact same way isn't going to get you the same result.
Right.
I mean, one of the things that's along these lines that I've often wondered about is whether there's an inherent contradiction between designing sports programs for the 50th percentile and designing them for the 95th percentile. And that maybe those two things are in some sense incompatible. So if we do away with high pressure intercollegiate sports and scholarships and things, maybe we produce fewer, maybe we don't, but maybe there's a chance we produce fewer world-class runners. Let's use running as an example. But maybe we also produce way more people who are happy and contented and run their whole lives. And maybe we get fewer 225 marathoners and more 250 marathoners. Now, are we happy? Is that what we want? I mean, I would be happy with that, but there are some people in the kind of elite sports community who would consider that a tragedy.
Well, so few kids, not enough kids participate in sports now. And I think if we can move the model to try to get more participation. I mean, there was just an article in the paper yesterday about the income gap between the wealthy families, earning over $100,000, 70% of those kids play sports. And in families earning $25,000 and less, 31% play sports. So I think this is part of the same conversation that the way we have developed the youth sports system with its high cost and just relentlessness has pushed more kids out, so that there are fewer kids, gaining any advantages.
Yeah, we corresponded, I remember, in the summer when I had my cockamamie idea of that cross-country teams should be 20, should score 20 runners deep, and so that I got so many.
How many beers had you had at this point?
What's that?
I said, how many beers had you had at this point?
Well, no. So here was the logic. Now, Linda said you can't actually do this, but then other people said they've done it. So I have no idea. But you have real world experience. The idea was this. Right now, you have on a cross country team, 5 scoring?
But
7 starting.
Yes,
7 starters, 5 who score. And I wanted to have 20 starters, 15 who score, so that the team hinges on the performance of those at the middle and the bottom, not those at the top.
Yeah.
That was my innovation. But the question is, could you, in fact, field a team of 20 at the high school? I mean, also high school needs to become enormous, but that's just more fun. That's right. Why shouldn't they be chaotic? I don't understand why.
Of all the sports, to be honest, cross country is one of the ones that I think has the least access problems.
Yes.
Considering that they generally don't have cuts, and you don't have to have been in the youth sports high performance pipeline to join a team.
Yeah.
And often you benefit if you haven't. I mean, I certainly when I started as a 9th grader running, there had been plenty of people in my town who had been running a long time.
And you were not at a disadvantage.
I was not at all at a disadvantage. If anything, I felt like I was at an advantage. That's
Yeah.
how it was framed to
Yes,
me.
because you were fresh.
Yeah, and you have plenty of years ahead. It's just like making, like recognizing this timeline. But with my kid interested in soccer, I think I spent $500 for a spring soccer experience for the kid. And he's not even leaving town.
Yeah.
So I don't really understand. He's had one practice. He's 9. Like, I don't understand how people are affording this and
Yeah.
continuing to do this.
Well, if I can just point out that in my town, we have a junior pre-academy for U4s, which is 3-year-olds.
Are you
And-
serious? Wait,
Yes.
what?
Well, it's a junior pre-academy, because then there's also the pre-academy, which is for
I
U5s and
see.
U6s.
So this is like pre-K.
Yes,
but-
so by the time, there's the junior pre-academy, then there's academy and futures, and then there's travel. They've been playing for 6 years and they're 9 years old,
Yeah.
And at each one, it's, $500 or more, which isn't, what the problem we were talking about with,
Yeah.
with the money. And I don't know how you do that.
No, the biggest obstacle, and you mentioned this, Linda, and I would like you to be more blunt about this because you're being too. The biggest obstacle to the kind of de-escalation of youth sports is the parents.
Oh, yeah.
So, and I'm reminded, anyone who has to deal with parents. My brother was a elementary school principal.
Oh.
He's now retired, so I can now say this about him. And he loved his job and loved the kids. It's just the parents that were.
Yeah.
And 50%, I think, of his anxiety came from parents, not from kids.
Yeah.
He was prepared for the kids, he wasn't prepared. And he also had this is very tangential, had this hilarious riff about how the teachers that the parents think are the best teachers are always the worst teachers. So he was
funny.
like, not only are they a pain in the ass, they don't know who the good teachers are. It's like they're sort of, so Martian says, why don't we ban parents from participation?
Yeah.
Or we give them one, they can go to one meet a year, one event a year. That's it. They got to pick one, and then they're done.
Okay, well, here's a good model is actually the way boarding schools do this, because parents don't go to those, and those sports programs, from what I understand, do pretty well, and the kids, it's pretty healthy with the coaches and the players, because the parents aren't, standing at the chain link fence observing. But in the absence of that, I think definitely restricting the parents is a good idea. And again, I would like to say I had a lot of wonderful parents, but their handful were not great.
Well, the stuff that you were talking about in your book about how, as parents, we get sucked into our achievement as parents is shown in our kids' accomplishments, and that's a relatively new phenomenon generationally.
Yes.
And my high school coach just retired after 30 years, and at his retirement party, he tells me this all the time. He's like, your parents were my favorite parents of all the parents in the 30 years, because they showed up to the first meeting. They came to 3 to 5 events.
Perfect. Yep.
They never once screamed,
Yes.
and they never told him how to do his job. They showed up enough, like you say in your book, to get to know the person who's spending crazy amounts of time with your kid.
Yeah.
That's important. Get to know them a little bit, and then get out of the way.
Yeah.
And truly, my sport experience always felt like it was mine, and that agency, that autonomy, kind of cleaved me to the sport in a way that I think got me through the ups and downs a lot better. And I don't know, I was so grateful for my parental experience, and then wanting to. Your book was very affirming and okay, they were actually doing a good job. So maybe I should try to do it like that.
Look how you turned out as a runner. I mean, you're this fantastic runner. It obviously, they were doing something right by just stepping back.
My dad came to, in my entire running career in high school, one event, and he immediately volunteered to help with the long jump. So he was raking the pit, and as I will say immodestly that I won. This was the Ontario Championships. I won that day. And as I'm rounding the final bend on my way to victory, I look into the infield and I see my dad. He's raking. And then he raises the rake and he goes, "Go, Malcolm!" brakes again. That was the extent of his involvement, and I loved that.
Yeah.
But to your point, the thing about them not being involved is that it allows you to also frame your successes and failures the way you want to frame them. Because the parental frame is very different. They're much more, they're far more sensitive, I think, in some ways to setbacks, they don't understand the context in which you're operating, the social network that you're competing in.
But you know, what has really struck me, and both as a coach and since when I've talked to a lot of parents, is just how anxious they are. It's all this anxiety about how their kids are going to turn out. Which I get, you know, that's what happens when you're a parent, but somehow it's played out in sports. It's also played out in school, but because sports are so visible, I think, you know, your value as a parent is so easily measured by how well your child does. And, you know, I've been overwhelmingly impressed by how anxious parents are about it, and that's why they're freaking out and, you know, complaining and shrieking and, you know, trying to get you fired because, you know, you're not doing enough for your child to get that child to the next level.
Did dealing with parents, how much of an obstacle is that for people, for coaches, continuing to coach, deciding to enter coaching? Is that constraining our supply of
Well, I have
coaches?
an important stat here to share, as we were discussing. This is accurate, too. 58% of coaches that were surveyed about 5 years ago, and I'm sure it's gotten worse, said they've thought about quitting because of parents. 2/3 of coaches said in a more recent survey said parents are always criticizing their child, they're criticizing their officials. I mean, coaches are really down on parents right now.
Yeah.
And it's interestingly enough, in this Aspen Institute survey, the parents were like, we love our coaches. So there's kind of this weird disconnect there. But coaches are really down on parents. And this is unfair. And I think so many parents are trying to do the right thing and don't want to be that parent. I've heard that so many times. I don't want to be that parent.
But
But can you do more mild repeats? You know, but I would like to say, though, that there is a time when they should interject, when they should be, you know, not complaining, but talking to the coach or talking to the athletic director, and that's when there's some funny business going on.
Yeah.
And, you know, the kids, the higher the level of athlete the child is, the more elite, the more likely they are to be emotionally abused and physically abused. And I think that's strangely when many parents don't step in. They raise hell when, you know, their child is put in right field. But if there's like just a lot of nastiness and a terrible team culture, they're quiet as long as the team is doing well. And
it's intimidating, I imagine, you know, because you're like dealing with an expert. We tend to assume that they have a method that's vetted, or they wouldn't have gotten to where they are.
Well, and if they're successful in particular.
Yes.
But meanwhile, there's a lot of tolerance of just terrible things that we shouldn't be tolerating just because the coach has a great reputation.
Yeah, that's true.
Lauren, you talk quite movingly and honestly about your own father in your book. It's some of the best parts of the book. And in the beginning of the book, I thought your father came across as a much less sympathetic figure than he does by the end. And I'm wondering, how do you judge? You're the elite runner here. How do you judge your own parents? You said earlier that at one point they were considered to be ideal parents, but how do you judge in this light of this conversation? How do you judge your parents' role in your athletic career?
I think they did a great job. I really do. I think my father's storyline. It's interesting to hear you say that he's a less sympathetic character at the beginning and more sympathetic near the end. And the purpose of my dad starting and ending the book with my dad is that he is sort of a metaphor for a lot of like the patriarchal forces in sport that we're up against. And there can be a tendency when we're calling out bad behavior, when we start to be like, hey, we no longer want to accept this kind of thing, to have no sympathy for the people who have been acting that way, but there's a reason why people do the things they do and act the way they act, and we've been, not to overuse this analogy, but like swimming in these waters for a long time now. And so I also wanted people to develop a similar sort of sympathy throughout the book for coaches who have wronged their athletes, or parents who have said the wrong thing, teammates who have contributed to the negative culture without meaning to, and be able to come full circle there and like, okay, we can be accountable, but we can also have some compassion. And then that is a much better place to ask people to make change from, is a place of compassion.
But do you think your father's role in your life helped you as a runner, was neutral, or hurt you as a runner?
I think that overall he was a really positive force. I think early in my life, I mixed up, he was an alcoholic, for people who haven't read the book, and he worked really long hours as a prop maker. And when he got home, there was about a 90-minute window where I could catch him sober before he would have too many drinks, where I didn't know what kind of dad I was going to get. And so I developed this habit of trying to really get his attention through excellence during those 90 minutes, because he really loved excellence in everything, music, sports, culture. Like it lit him up to see people at their peak doing something incredible. So I wanted to have his light on me in that way. So from that perspective, I can't even really blame him for that. That's just one of those childhood things where a dynamic emerges. The alcoholism was not ideal. Definitely would have preferred that not to be there. But then, gosh, throughout my career, he was it was a constant positive, like, I always knew I'd be loved no matter what the result was when I came home. So even though I desperately wanted to please him and be excellent for him, he never came down on me when I failed. So from that perspective, I would like to be that kind of parent for my kids.
Linda, you write a lot in your book about your youngest son was the athlete.
He's right there, by
I
the
know,
way.
yeah. That's why I thought I would seize this opportunity with him right there, kind of, with his. How do you grade your parental performance with respect to your son?
Maybe we can ask him after. I'd say B+.
B+.
B+, yeah.
What stopped you from getting an A on this?
Well, I really regret that sometimes when he would come home from games, the rare times I didn't go, I'd say, "Did you win? How many points did you score?" And I should have done that, And, there were times, and I'm like, well, my husband and I both sort of encouraged him to, maybe you should try lacrosse. That's the big sport around here. And, do you still want to play baseball? And just kind of leading too much. I think if we should have just stepped back and said, whatever you want to do is great. We'll support you. If you don't want to play baseball, fine. Whatever you want to do. If you want to try lacrosse, great. You want to go, run track, that's fine too. Or whatever you want to do is fine. But instead I think both of us were a little too, encouraging of the popular sports in town. And that's really what I think, that's one of my recommendations in the book, is just, let your child take the lead. They need to be the ones making the decision. It's their sport. I think about my running, unlike yours, neither of my parents ran, or they were like, what are you doing? There just was no sort of concept of it. And that was extremely helpful to me. They had zero expectations for anything I did athletically. So, it was then totally mine. It was my activity, and I loved it, and I didn't have any of that feeling of I'm letting them down or anything. And so that's why I give myself a B+ for Paul.
Parents have their own agenda,
Yes.
right? And it's like all the things that we've been talking about. When we're the ones aware of the economic forces, we're the ones aware of the loans we need to take out. It's natural, I think, to have an agenda. And it's just I loved how humbly you talked about the things you wished you'd done differently in the book. It's I can't overstate what a good time it is for me to read your book.
Wait, the Martian has another question.
Yes, Martian.
This is the Martian's most frivolous suggestion, although maybe not. The Martian says, wonders why, given all of the body issues that afflict girls in sports, why female runners wear button huggers and crop tops.
Well, it's a very easy question to answer for the Martian. It's because our culture feels that female bodies are there to be viewed, objectified, commented on, and in order to do that, they need to be wearing less fabric and tighter fitting fabric. And that is how female athletes got their start post-Title IX, was a movement to make, really, this is true, to make up for the fact that people would need to be watching inferior performances. And so they needed to be a visual spectacle. And that's where the uniform differences came from, and gender-specific clothing in sport, which of course women will say they wanted. They didn't want to be wearing like a men's extra large hoodie necessarily all the time. They wanted things that fit and performed, but it took this aesthetic angle that was, yeah, so that's why.
I mean, because I read your book and then was looking at pictures of, I think some cross-country team, I've forgotten which, women's cross-country team. And all of a sudden I was aware of the fact that here were 5 young women, all of whom had six-packs, all of whom had not a stitch of fat on them, all of whom looked sort of shiny and healthy. And I was like, Jesus, that's a high bar for somebody who is not an elite Division I runner. Or someone, if I was a 11, 12-year-old girl thinking about running in high school, and I go online and I see that picture, that's what can we at least just wear a t-shirt and a pair of baggy shorts and just make it just that little bit easier on that 11-year-old who wants to join in?
Yeah, well, the thing is that probably only, I don't think a six-pack is necessary for high performance at all. And there is a fixation with looking the part more than being the part. And the uniform creates that dynamic. I mean, it played a huge part in my life throughout my whole career. It was like, okay, my workouts are good, but like, what do I look like in my uniform? I don't look race ready, so I'm not race ready. Or the scale doesn't say I'm race ready, so I'm not race ready. Whereas like, those are not the most important indicators, not even close. And like, we have these concepts of race weight that are created and perpetuated by men primarily, who have way less monthly fluctuation hormonally, and they are being applied to female athletes as if we can somehow have a magic number on a scale that if we can stay this number, we will perform optimally based on physics formulas. But that's not how our bodies work. And then it creates this very narrow band that you have to try to exist in and achieve in order to be viewed as elite. And I mean, I watched it happen on my teams where women who didn't look like that were shamed, made to feel like they weren't committed enough just because they didn't have the six-pack. It didn't really matter how fast they were running.
That's your college team?
Yeah.
Because in our town, the high school girls wear those uniforms.
Yeah.
I just think that's terrible.
I just think that there's not a performance advantage.
No,
so, or the men and boys would do it.
Yeah.
Wait,
so it's just
Linda, at the school you coached at, so you were coaching girls cross country? Did they wear?
Oh no, there's no way I would have let them.
Oh, you put your foot down.
No, there's no way I was gonna. I think that's terrible. Like, I think it's like forcing them to think that the only way you can be a runner is if you wear bikini bottoms. I mean, I wouldn't wear those. And especially when you're in high school. I mean, you're just trying to figure things out. And even if it like shame you into getting fitter, like, is that what we were trying to do? I mean, I would never allow that with my girls.
Yeah. One of my favorite images of Des Linden when she won the Boston Marathon. She's
Yeah.
wearing those baggy shorts.
Oh, yeah.
And for some reason, it's just the whole thing is so fantastic and badass, and like, I just realized it's much more powerful emotionally
Yeah.
to watch her because she's not pretending to be or wearing that uniform. She's just sort of being her.
Yeah, she's just wearing the things she wants to wear. Wasn't she
What she
also
wants
wearing
to wear.
basically a parachute of a running jacket? Like, I feel like she was wearing a
She was.
jacket
She
when
was.
she won the marathon.
The whole
I
thing
was
was
like,
yeah.
wow, yeah.
There was a time, for those of you who don't, Des Linden is a very, 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 very good American marathoner who won the year. There was a year that the Boston Marathon took place in a gale.
Yeah.
And the only way you could win, I mean, it was so nuts that, like, the only way you could win is if you were the single toughest, most badass runner.
Yeah.
And Des Linden just sailed through. I
Yeah.
wept the last 3 miles of that, watching it on TV. I was like,
That was
I
so
could not believe how
beautiful.
emotional it was.
She broke an incredibly long drought in the event for an
Yeah.
American winner.
Oh,
and
to win it, American
yeah, and her book's coming out in like a week, I think.
That's right. We should really do
And
it
it-
again with Des.
yeah,
and
definitely.
Maybe she'll go running with me, unlike two of you. Like, wasn't
Keep
good.
trying, Malcolm. Someone will say yes.
No, she'd go running with me. I used to repost her Strava workouts because they were so fantastic. They were like, you know, you look at the temperature and then you'd look at like the altitude where she was running, and you'd look at the workout and you go, oh my God, oh, she's amazing. The Martian is one other question. We have. Well, I got these cards. I'm supposed to go to these. Oh, the Martian wonders. So here's the. It's really me, not the Martian on this one. You know, I ran competitively in high school and stopped for 35 years and started again.
I didn't know
And I
that.
stopped because, although I was very successful as a runner, the pressure. I was 13 and 14 and 15, and I found the pressure of racing, it grew unbearable. And I just couldn't do it anymore. And I lost track of how much joy I found in running and got consumed by the fact that the only measure of me as a runner was whether I could win a race. And I lost out on 35 years of pleasure as a result of
That's too bad.
And now I'm wondering, should we, since we're banning stuff, lots of stuff now, should we be banning kind of serious competition until, I don't know, 15 or 16 or something? Should we push out is there any reason why 13-year-olds should be competing at the national level?
No, in my view. Well, you know, I was at the Milrose Games about 6 weeks ago and noticed that they had a race for the fastest 8-year-olds in the world. And they had these, you know, these tiny children lined up, and
God.
then they, you know, from different countries. I don't know where they came from, but
Yeah.
they all ran like the same time, like ridiculously fast. And this is one, you know, we were talking about before, you mentioned various models for doing things. We don't need to do the national championships at age 13 and 12. Like maybe in a lot of sports around this country, there are these ridiculous championships of like little children. And there's no reason for that. And the country that doesn't do this is Norway, and they have incredibly robust participation and then like great success with their athletes after. So I would tell the Martian, let's forget the championships.
You know
at
what?
least before 15, say.
I did this recently, and I can't remember whether it was 15-year-olds or 16-year-olds. Someone made a list of the top English 16-year-old male milers, 1,500-meter runners, over the last 30 or some odd years. And the question raised was, how many of them went on to be world-class adult milers? And the answer was such a small number that it was like, you're like, wait, what? So if we're doing sports at that age because we're trying to identify people who will be talented as adult athletes, it's just about the worst predictor imaginable.
Yeah, it's not
Yes.
working.
No.
So
It's not
and I
working.
was just thinking in this story, like the reason why we have the national championships is for the adults
Exactly.
and for the sponsors and the people want to make money hosting it and
Yeah.
and getting the TV rights and all that stuff. It's like show me the 8-year-old who's like, I want to race the best 8-year-olds in the world.
Yeah.
Mom, can you look that up? Does that exist?
That's right.
Hold on. Let's go to some questions. These are very good questions. Hold on.
The Martian isn't liking the question.
Well, there's no, I have to choose among them,
I
and
see.
that's almost impossible. For Linda, what was your favorite part about coaching girls?
I really enjoyed them. I loved being around teenagers who, they get such a bad rap unfairly, I think. They're so funny and unpredictable and full of potential. And I loved working with them. And I always say I looked forward to practice. Every day I looked forward to practice. And that's why I continued coaching.
How do you, as a coach, solve the problem that you're more likely to favor the gifted ones than the not so gifted ones? Is that a problem? And how do you, if it's so, how do you deal with it?
Well, I don't know exactly. I think you have to be aware of the fact that you may have, favorites. And I would say it's more about favoritism, because sometimes the best one is not your favorite. So I think it's just takes awareness on the part of the coach to recognize that it's not building the team to focus solely on the best girls. Especially, like cross country is a team sport, even though it's sort of a quasi-individual sport. And if you're repeating the message that everybody counts, it's not just the top girl, the second girl, then you really have to work on developing all of them. And it just takes that kind of, that's just like common sense.
Yeah. It's hard. Lauren, if I was your high school coach, I would be famous, right?
I don't know. Do you know my high school coach?
Within my point is that there's a natural, the success of the athlete invariably reflects back on the coach in ways that is not always, sometimes
right.
fair,
Well,
but not always
this
fair.
story didn't make the book, but and I'm still a little bit upset about it. No, I'm just kidding. But my high school coach, by the time my senior year came around, he was getting really swept up in the accolades and how it reflected on him. And there was some indoor meet that we'd never focused on from Southern California. Like indoor track is not really a thing, but there is this one place that you can do it with a wooden track. And so we would go and sort of have a relay every year there. But he was like, no, you're gonna run the Invitational Mile and the Invitational 2 Mile. These used to be prestigious races 25 years ago. I want to coach someone who wins these races. And so we were training over Christmas break for the first time ever, like doing these hard workouts in a time of year when normally we're just going on fun runs. I was not enjoying myself. I was feeling tired from the cross country season. And when we got there, I ran the first race, did terribly. And I was like, I don't want to do the second race. And he's like, no, you need to do the second race. This is a big opportunity. He's like pushing me to do it. And I was like, Coach, I'm not your racehorse. And he loves telling that story to people. He'll bust out laughing. He's like, can you believe that? Can you believe she said that to me? But then he apologized in the car later. He was like, he actually said, he's like, I was getting swept up. I was making it about me. I wanted that.
Yeah.
And you never wanted it. And I just wasn't listening to you when you were trying to tell me. So it's real.
It's a rare
Coach pressure, man.
That's a rare coach.
Ooh, somebody's. How can parents? There's a couple of these on the whole parents question that I'm now feeling. Well, actually, this is a good one. So we had a whole series of things we wanted to ban.
Oh yes.
Can we? So we wanted to ban bun huggers and crop tops.
Men, I think, were on there.
What's that?
Men were on there, I think.
Parents. We're banning parents. We're banning competition before
15.
15, I think is a reasonable.
Championship.
You realize
Competitions are okay, just not championship.
My running career was over effectively at 15, so you've just erased me from. I have nothing. The amount of mileage I've gotten out over the years over my running exploits at the age of 14 is considerable. That's now gone. Anyway, so I'm fine. I'll take it on the chin for the team. What's your favorite band of all the bands? If you could only do one of those, we can ban the parent, the championships, the bun huggers, and and the college scholarships. I know my favorite band.
College scholarships is my favorite band.
Mine too.
I think it would downstream solve a lot of the other
Yeah.
problems. They could basically neutralize parents, most of them.
Just that expression is so fantastic. Neutralize. 3 parents up on stage talking about the virtues of neutralizing people in our position.
Yeah, and then there'd be less motivation to host the 8-year-old world championships.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, here's a good question. Does a change in women's girls sports need to start at the grassroots level, or will it have to, or are we talking something that has to happen top down? Can we have a revolution that can change this, or do we have to, is someone that, you talk about a kind of you want a czar. You wanted Michelle Obama to kind of step in.
Yeah, that would be nice.
People have so many czar jobs for her.
Yeah, I know.
It's like,
Yeah, it's
does
true.
Michelle know
Who
that like
doesn't
basically
want
every
Michelle in
intractable
charge?
problem America has, we think, well, only Michelle.
I think it has to be both. I know that's a bit of a cop-out. But, okay, let's start with the top, though. If we ban the scholarships, that
Yeah.
is going to have this trickle-down effect. And it's going to, permeate all the way down. That addresses the larger issues with youth sports more than, the ones, the specific to girl problems. But I think it would transform the whole game.
And then a similar high-level thing, I think, would be mandatory coaching education for anyone working with female-bodied athletes. I think I can't think of a single reason why we wouldn't do that with the giant gap in knowledge we have. And then everyone, of course, should buy our books, because that'll be the
Naturally.
grassroots thing. That'll create our own Me Too moment where people I'm not standing for it. We need that.
On the grassroots thing, and both of you would have way more knowledge about this than me, but am I being overly optimistic if I say that the change is going to happen when the girls themselves stand up and just say, this is nuts? Like, well, the thing about that paragraph that I read at the beginning, it's like, if you're the coach of that team and you observe that someone's disappeared and no one's really talking about why, someone's on her 3rd or 4th unexplainable stress fracture, someone's bulimic, and then the person who wins the race from the other team is so scarily thin that you're worried about her.
Yeah, well, you can normalize anything.
I was just going to say,
In a culture, right? And so, yeah, but I don't think that it's fair to put it on the girls. I really think parents.
Yeah.
Parents don't have enough to do. If they want to get involved, this is how you should get involved, which is don't stand for it. And you talk about that, about stepping in, not being afraid to be the parent that says, no, I'm not going to do the extra thing. I'm not.
Yeah. Well, I think, it's funny, in my book, I was trying to kind of both understand where parents are coming from and also offer a critique. And I think that it is important that parents recognize they have agency, that they don't have to go along with everything, that, that extra strength and conditioning training or, weight workout might be helpful, the supplemental training, like the soccer club in my town that offers 6-year-olds, that they can say no to that. It's okay to say no to that.
And from just the other day when I dropped my kid off at the $500 spring soccer experience, at practice,
I love how bitter you are about it.
I'm very annoyed. Wait till you hear this part. I was like, see ya, Jude. And then one of the parents that I know is a parent of another kid in the class, and she's like, you're not staying? And I was like, God, so it makes it tough to, we're giving each other pressure.
Yes. You weren't staying at a practice?
Yeah, I wasn't going to stay and watch the practice.
Oh, God.
God.
This is what I have to look forward to. Wait, someone is waving frantically at me from off stage, so we got to end soon. But I wanted to, for all the runners out there, I wanted to toss them a bone. And someone asked this question of you, Lauren, since you're our running star. It's so rare that we get to hang out with real stars.
It's fun.
Well.
But I'm still bitter about not getting to go running with you. But because you know what? I'll tell you why I was looking forward to it.
It's not too late. What are you doing tomorrow morning?
This is the thing. Those of us who are just kind of everyday runners, when we run with people who are at your level, you guys float. And we're running, and you look over, and you're just going, and it's like magic. It's like watching a magician do a trick, right? And you're like, oh my God, you're not breathing, and you're not like, and you're just kind of, you're not touching the ground, and you're like, how is this happening?
That sounds like you're an intellectually curious person. Most people are like, I'm like, do you want to run with me? They're like, oh no. I would never do that. I'm like, I promise I'll run the pace you want to run. And they're just like, no, definitely not.
I went running, I made Kyle Merber drive up here and go running with me. 335, 1,500 meter guy. Just because I wanted to see this thing happen. And it's just like,
Kyle is a beautiful runner. I have to say though, the offer was to run at 5 p.m. and I had to curl my hair. So I would have run with you. It was just too late.
I had similar constraints.
So the question is, what do you, off stage, they're just going nuts. But the question is, what did you like least? It's a question about marathon training. Now, how many marathons have you run?
Only 2.
And what was your fastest one?
2:37.
And you're 2:49.
2:49.
You guys are, you're within shouting distance.
Yeah.
Not really.
And wait, now I have more questions about your marathoning. Do you think if you had trained exclusively for the marathon, was that a better sport for you ultimately? But no, because you had a big kick.
Probably not. I have the mentality of like a miler.
Yeah.
And then but my physiology forced me to move up in distance. And so taking a miler mentality to the marathon makes it really painful. I was actually on pace for 2:28 in that marathon until the last 6 miles. So I lost 9 minutes. Is that right? Did I do that math right?
Oh my God.
Yeah, it was very, very epic wall-hitting experience. So I don't know if I'm really like an expert on marathon training. Is it what
well, the
did
question,
I like?
this is really for the two of you, and then we really do have to stop. What did you guys like the most about marathon training? Linda, you start, and then we'll let Lauren finish.
Boy, it was 1,000 years ago that I
don't say
ran
that.
2:49.
If I had run 2:49, I would have a T-shirt that said 2:49 on it. All right, so like, blow your own horn here.
Yeah, and in super shoes, that'd be like a 2:30.
Right. Oh, you're right. I had a great group to train with, and the training is the fun part. Not always, but it's the camaraderie that I got in the marathon training. And you're out there a long time.
Yeah.
So for those, the training runs were kind of fun to do too, when they weren't miserable.
I didn't have a group, but I did get to have my professional coach, Mark Rowland at Oregon Track Club Elite. I had always had him in a group setting, and I was the only one doing a marathon, and that's normally the time of year I did New York, when track and field athletes are taking a break. And so I had him to myself, and he would ride his bike alongside me, and we got to have all these really nice chats, and I just loved, that was the last year we worked together. So to have that, I have a lot of fond memories from that.
Yeah, I think that's a lovely way to end, because it's a reminder. We've been talking about what's wrong with running. And the thing that I always try and tell young people when I try to get them to become runners is that this thing, the camaraderie stuff, is something that is just magical. Like going on a long run with a group of people who you are friends with or close to and you've worked out with before, there's something there that you'll never find anywhere else. It's just a...
Yeah. And I think that love, that's what drove our books. It's like when you know that you have something worth fighting for and protecting, and we really just want to remove a lot of the garbage that's getting in the way of that.
Right.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much to the two of you.
Thanks.
And thank you to all of you. And go buy your books and get them signed.